Hello, everybody, and welcome to our next segment on sustainability. Before we jump in, I wanted to let you know that we'll have a Q&A session at the end of this. To submit questions for this, there's a little icon in the lower right hand of your screen. Either it says chat or it's got a little chat bubble in there. If you click on that, you can submit your questions. And at the end of this segment, we will have time to answer some of those, hopefully. So submit away. We'd love to hear from you. So let's get on to it. Sustainability. The focus on this topic has increased drastically over the recent years and actually has become a discussion topic across all industries at this point. And so we're lucky enough to be here today with Kristen Smith, who is the Director of Sustainability for Earth Animal. Welcome, Kristen. And she's going to talk to us a little bit about sustainability. But before we get started, Kristen, could you just tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. First of all, I just want to thank you very much for having me today. This is such a great event that you do for consumers all over California. So I'm very happy to be a part of that. So as you said, my name is Kristen Smith. I am the head of sustainability at Earth Animal, which is a health and wellness company. We're based in Connecticut, but I'm sure you see our products at your pet food experts. So I've been in the pet industry for about 15 years, 2 years here at Earth Animal, and had a passion for sustainability since day one. Since before sustainability was as much of a buzzword as it is today, the companies I've been with have really had that strong commitment to sustainability in the pet industry.
Wonderful. Well, we're so happy to have you. Let's jump in. We've got some questions for you. Can you tell us a little bit about your role in sustainability with Earth Animal?
Sure. So again, Earth Animal has been deeply committed to sustainability since its inception in 1979. It's always had its roots in health and wellness, non-toxic, organic ingredients, and using the power of plants and nature to help relieve some of the common ailments that pets have. And then over time developed what's our no-hide chew, which was the sort of original substitute for rawhide chews, a healthy, digestible option made from just 6 ingredients, all sustainable. And then moving into the development of our Wisdom dog food, which is a handcrafted, highly nutritious, organic, humanely raised protein food. And as we've grown, there have been more and more opportunities for us to explore sustainability at a higher level. We have, more production, more manufacturing happening with the development of new products. And so we're really taking care to look at the environmental impact that we're having as we grow. So as the head of sustainability, I've been managing and pushing forward a number of the initiatives that we have in place, again, to keep going on our sustainability promise.
Just an incredibly important role. And on a side note, my dogs thank you for the no hide. It is a favorite for a long time.
Yes, they are world famous, which is
They are.
nice.
They really are. They're fantastic. So what do you think sustainability means in the pet industry?
So sustainability means so much to so many people, and there's all these things that kind of fall under a sustainability umbrella. People I think often go straight to, oh, it's environmental, it's greenhouse gases, it's carbon emissions, it's pollution, things like that, which it absolutely is. A sustainable business needs to be taking care of our planet to make sure that our planet can continue to take care of the business and the business's customers. But there's other pieces to it as well, especially for an industry like the pet food industry. There's an animal welfare component to that. There's an inherent conflict because people take their companion animals and they bring them into their homes and they treat them like members of the family, and they give them, they go to Pet Food Express and they buy lots and lots of great toys and treats and all sorts of things to make sure that that companion animal has a great life. But we have to go all the way back through the supply chain to realize that the other part of animals that are involved in the pet food space are the animals that are raised to feed these companion animals. And so the use of proteins in the pet industry is another piece of a sustainable future that really needs to be addressed. Factory farming of animals is a massive polluter, and we know that there's just a lot of methane that's released, and real fouling of the soil and the water. But it's also that animal welfare and how well animals are treated. And so for proteins, it's really important. Like if you look at globally, and if dogs in the United States, just in the United States, were a country, they would be the 5th largest consumer of animal protein in the world.
Wow.
So they're ahead of the UK. Dogs in the United States eat more meat than the United Kingdom as a whole. So it's very, very pertinent for the pet food industry to be looking at that. So that, again, so you've got your environmental pieces, your animal welfare pieces, and trying to move away from factory farmed animals. And then you have DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. And this has become a real focus for the pet industry as well over the last 5 years. It's kind of been there, but really more of a focus now. And that really looks at like inclusion. What do the ads look like? Who are you seeing as influencers and ambassadors? Are they reflective of the entire range of pet parents out there? Because there's the pet segment is growing so quickly. There's more and more pet parents every day, and really wanting our industry to be reflective of what that community looks like. Also really working hard on more proactive hiring practices and recruitment practices for a more diverse workforce, and having policies in place to really help to move anyone from the community, regardless of their anything, to be able to enter the space and succeed.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. As sustainability has become more and more prevalent, we really do have to look at all of these other facets, right? It's not just the shipping component. There's so many more and so more deep things that we should consider. That's wonderful.
Yeah, it's like it's all about sustainable business, really. When you think about it, what makes it interesting to businesses beyond the desire to do well is how does this keep my business going and sustain my business? And so that really does come down to your supply chain, your impact on the environment. There's savings that can be found when you find the leaks of your of your emissions and things like that. And then your people, and keeping your people satisfied, engaged, feeling fulfilled.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right. What do you think some of the challenges have been to adopt the sustainability practices in the industry?
Well, it's like every industry. I think the first thing is for the industry to come together to try to define it and decide, what does sustainability mean to our industry, and how are we going to tackle the pieces of it that we have control over in our industry. And that bringing together of an industry has really taken time. And the pet industry has really modeled itself after like the textile industries. There has been, but it took a long time to get these businesses together to start looking at their challenges as a whole. We've learned a lot from the outdoor industry, which has also done that. So there's an organization called the Pet Sustainability Coalition that started 10 years ago, and over the last 10 years has brought together companies in the pet space from all over: packagers, manufacturers, brands, retailers, and really started to build that foundation for moving sustainability forward. There's a challenge there, like with every business, that businesses don't necessarily want to share their secrets, or there's like this culture of collaboration that hasn't always existed in a business environment, and some businesses really like to hold their special thing close to their chest, and don't want to share all of their sourcing, for example, or maybe, their recipes and how much of what goes into what, to maintain their competitive advantage. But it's really, once the industry can come together and collaborate, that real change is going to be able to happen. So that's really been, I think, the biggest piece of the educational part that's been needed, is fostering that culture of collaboration.
The more that we can share the knowledge, the faster we grow, right?
Yeah.
Yes. So, can you share some maybe exciting news that you've got for sustainability, some initiatives that you've seen coming out of the pet industry?
Yeah. And that's the nice thing, is that there really is so much amazing things happening.
It's
Again,
grown
I
so
mentioned,
fast. Yeah.
yeah.
Grown so fast so recently. That's the wonderful thing. So there's got to be a lot
Yeah,
of
it
things coming
really,
out.
it's snowballing in every industry, which is really thrilling to
Yes.
me.
Great.
And it's, partially there is just this business imperative. A lot of businesses have that as their core mission, that they want to do good in the world. And consumers are really starting to demand cleanly sourced ingredients. They want to know where the ingredients are coming from. They want to know if they're certified humane. There's all these new certifications that are coming out to help the consumer who really cares about this make great choices. So there's a bunch of things going on right now. One is something that's called the Better Chicken Commitment. And so this is a commitment that spans both the human space and the pet space, where different companies, you've got Target in there, and HelloFresh, and fresh salad, one of the salad chains, Shake Shack, all of these big national brands that are using a lot of chicken in the pet space. And the commitment says that by 2025, the chickens that are used in that supply chain have there's a number of things that are committed to, and it's clean and ample space in a hen house or the chicken house, with like clean fill down below that's constantly switched out. That there's a minimum standard of the number of birds that can be in this space. There has to be significant and sufficient natural light coming in, and then natural darkness, so that the daylight, nightlight, nighttime rhythms are based on what a chicken's natural behavior would be. There needs to be some enrichment, so they need to be able to peck at something at will. They need have things to move around, or whatever it is that chickens like to do to entertain themselves in their in their free time. So there has to be some level of enrichment. They have to have freedom to move in and out and be able to go where they want. So they have to be able to wander up and say hello to any chicken that they want to say hello to, as long as there's not a concern for fighting or any kind of harm to happen. But it's all about choice, that the animal can enrich itself when it wants to, have a good life while it's alive. And then there's an element about humane slaughter. So it means that the animal has to be basically stunned and put to sleep before it gets to where the slaughter takes place, and they can't see or hear anything that might be happening on the other side of the wall, so that they're not in a state of fear at the moment that they are killed. So it's really important stuff. And the nice thing here is that, again, the human space is driving this, and there are a number of chicken suppliers that really want to be a part of it. Purdue is actually one of the companies that's really driving these efforts forward. But the pet industry, for pet food, we take the parts of the chicken that the human space isn't necessarily using. And it's the pieces of the chicken that are really high in nutrient value, the bones, the parts of the muscle that the humans don't want or aren't going to eat, and we take the rest. And again, it creates this really nutritious chicken pieces that are part of what a good food needs to help your animal thrive. And so, working with the human space, this commitment, we're going to be able to source a lot more really humanely raised chicken. So it's a great opportunity to kind of move things along at scale and help the pet food industry capitalize on some of the things that consumers are demanding on the human side. So that's one thing that's really exciting, is just this whole movement towards really, really respecting the animals in the supply chain. Another piece of it is plastics. So you go to the store, you see it, every bag of pet food, every bag of food is in a plastic bag. All of the treats are in plastic bags. Each one of those bags looks a little different, might feel a little bit different. Most of those bags are made out of a multi-layered plastic. So there's a number of different laminates in there that help protect the food and keep it nice and dry and all of that good stuff. But the problem is most of that plastic is not able to be recycled. The Pet Sustainability Coalition commissioned a study in 2019 that found that the pet industry generates 300 million pounds of plastic that it puts out into the world every year. 300 million pounds. And 99% of that is going into landfills. Mm-hmm. So this is, again, a massive impact that the pet industry is having on the environment that just has to be addressed. It's simply not sustainable. So the Pet Sustainability Coalition started several years ago a project called Flex Forward. And the idea was to have in-store collection for those flexible plastic bags. Any brand, anything could go in there. They collected 7,000 pounds of this flexible plastics and are working directly with a specialty recycling company, I think it's in Ohio, to try to figure out what can be done to actually recycle these materials and break them down into a way that they can be reused. One of the things they're looking at is like melting it down and turning it into little pellets. Mm-hmm. And these pellets are used in a lot of industries to create something else. So you'll see a lot of dog toys are made out of recycled plastics. So the idea there would be to turn these bags into something like that and maybe use that to create enrichment products for shelters across the country or something like that. So there's a lot of creativity going into that. It's a slow process. It's very difficult. It's not easy to separate these layers, and we just don't yet have the technology to do that, but it's coming and there's more and more effort there. And so in the interim, while we're working on better plastics, there's just been introduced something called the packaging pledge that a lot of our pet industry, pet food companies are signing. And that is a time-bound commitment to try to have, it should be 100%, like the commitment says 100%, but at least keep moving the needle forward on either packaging that comes from recycled materials, that is completely recyclable, or that is compostable. And the goal there would be by 2025 for companies that sign this. So it's an aggressive timeline. It's another initiative of the Pet Sustainability Coalition. And again, they're developing all these resources and tools to help companies move that forward if they choose to sign the commitment. And then in between, during that other interim, while companies are working to get better, there's a number of really excellent programs out there to do offsets, plastic offsets, so that can at least make the company plastic neutral while they're trying to get towards plastic negative. And so we work with one called Repurpose Global. That is an amazing organization. We calculate exactly how much plastic goes into our packaging, and we look at every single unit that we sell, and we have a weight of exactly how much plastic that translates into, and we calculate that, and then we pay $14 for an offset of X amount of plastic to this organization that's called Repurpose Global. And what they do is mobilize local workers, waste workers in developing countries that need more employment, who then are helping to remove plastics from the waterways and the places where they are. So they have a couple of projects in India. I actually just got back from being able to visit one of those projects in India, which was incredible. They have several in Africa. They have one in Colombia. And And so what they're doing is really providing a social good while also removing plastics from the environment. So it's a nice way for a company like Earth Animal to at least do something good while we're continuing to put the plastics out there that we're putting out there. So that's some of the exciting stuff that's happening with plastics and animal welfare. And the other piece right now is the environmental stuff. It's getting easier and easier for companies to do like a life cycle analysis of their products. And Earth Animal has done this on a couple of our products where you look from every single ingredient from its source all the way through the manufacturing process and then all the way to the end of life of the product. So for pet food and pet treats, the end of life is like in the dog's belly or when it comes out of the dog's belly. So that's our end of life, but if it was a pair of jeans or sneakers or something else, that end of life would be more calculation. And so we're able to look at, how far does the protein have to travel? What kind of emissions come out during that travel process? What are the emissions at the manufacturer in order to break those materials down and get them into the shape of a no-hide? And then how much is it to transport it to retailers? So we're able to look at all of those and do calculations, and that helps us to set some more concrete targets to get to reduce that. So ideally, if I do my job well, then we go back in 3 years and we do another life cycle analysis and we see that impact has really dropped. So those are things that a lot of companies are doing and helpful. And again, it's a slow process. Many of these companies are small. Earth Animal is a very small company, and but it's giving us ways to really try to move forward. And keep that journey moving for each of us.
My hope is that as more and more companies get online with this and show interest with this, that journey, speeds up a little bit, right? As we have more input and everything. It's exciting stuff. I'm certainly one that reads packages at groceries because I am an avid animal lover, and I want to know, how were these animals treated before they wound up on my dinner table, kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And there are some nice tools for that now. You'll look at packaging on almost anything now, and you're going to see a bunch of little icons on there. And brands are very proud of these certifications that they're able to get. And so you'll see humanely raised, or certified humane, or maybe GAP certified, which is the Global Animal Partnership standards for animal welfare. Or you'll see plastic neutral, or there's a number of different ones. If it's clothes, it'll have a fair trade or fair exchange. And so those are nice little tools if you're looking at those packages that can help you see what's going on. There's another one that has really started to gain traction now. It's called How to Recycle. It's a project from the Sustainable Packaging Coalition that draws on all sorts of industries, because you look at the bottom of your plastic jar or whatever, and you'll see the three arrows going around, and they'll have a number in the middle. Well, those numbers can be a little bit misleading, and a lot of people just aren't sure. Like, oh, a 7, it's a 7. I can just put it here because that's got that little wheel. And of course, not every number is recyclable in this community or that community. And it's a complicated world out there when that is the only system that we have to help people. So How to Recycle is actually, it's a rectangle, and it says what the number is. And then right next to it, it says, 1 and 2, community recycling, take back at store, mail in, or not recyclable. So it actually has this very specific tool, so exactly what to do with that piece of material. And I think that as that gains traction, that's going to be a really big resource for consumers too, to know, what am I really supposed to do with this thing? Knowing that when things go to the recycling facility and they're not recyclable, they go back to the landfill anyway. So if we're serious about it, then more tools will help us, again, keep more out of the landfill.
Right. The more simple the process, the better likely that we will all follow it.
Yeah.
I think that's fantastic. Let's see, can you tell us more about Earth Animals' specific commitment to sustainability and the overall purpose to enhance quality of life for animals, people, Earth? You've talked a lot about it. Is there more details that you can give us?
Sure. Yeah, I've mentioned a bunch. So, Earth Animal has what we call our 1% promise. And that means that we dedicate 1% of our annual net sales to like minded organizations, industry stewardship, and mission driven efforts to preserve and enhance quality of life for animals, people, and the earth. And so, what that means is we give away money to some really wonderful nonprofits. We give away a lot of product to shelters and disaster relief organizations and things like that. But we also use that 1% on some of these initiatives that I've mentioned, our animal welfare work, our offsets. That 1% helps us buy both the plastic offsets that we do, and we also do carbon offsets with a couple of different organizations that it's a similar model. We pay for the carbon we put out there, and then they use that money to help pull carbon out in a number of different ways. We're very active members in the Pet Sustainability Coalition. I've mentioned it many times, but it is just it's just a real gift to the industry. And we are very active in what they do. We are members of the Sustainable Packaging Coalition, things, so that's where we use that money. And right now we're really focusing on plant-based products. We're looking, again, because animals in the supply chain, there's ethical issues for our founders and there's environmental issues. And so we're looking for ways to at least reduce our reliance on animal protein. And so we've been working with the Better Meat Company, which is a very big player in the human space, to help us develop some plant-based proteins for our pet foods that can replace some or all of the animal proteins that we're using right now. And that's really exciting for us. It's, that's a goal. It's a ways out before we're going to be able to do that. But we're looking very closely at the nutrition value of this food and verifying and being absolutely sure that when we're replacing those proteins, that none of the proteins that a dog needs are being lost in the process, because health and wellness is at the core of our business. So we would never do anything to sacrifice that health and wellness first. But plant proteins are proving to be equally as nutritious and have the exact same proteins that dogs need. It doesn't work for cats. Cats are considered, it's called obligate carnivores. They have to have meat in order for their nutrition needs to be filled. But dogs, it doesn't have to be animal protein. It just has to be the right levels of protein, which is available from other sources. So that's an exciting piece that we're working on. And we're dedicating 5% of that money to research and development of new plant-based technologies and new ways that we can look at, some other ways to get that protein needs filled.
Yeah. That's an exciting one too. I remember not too long ago, you maybe see a veggie burger on a menu, but now it's kind of this beginning stage of this, next rollout of plant-based protein options out there. So how exciting to be.
Absolutely. Again, it's just like, oh my gosh, it's really happening, and it's happening really quickly. When you can see an Impossible Burger at Burger King, something really big is happening. It's exciting, and it's necessary, right? Our planet just cannot sustain the amount of protein that we're eating and the environmental impacts of what that protein is doing to the planet. And so we have to find solutions. It's just, there's really no alternative. And so I'm really glad to see as much happening as is happening. So a couple other things that Earth Animal is doing is we just completed a supply chain code of conduct, a supplier code of conduct. So where we get where we source our materials, we are asking them to join us with this code of conduct to help make sure that they are sharing in our values of how we want to source our ingredients. Our ingredients have to be traceable. They have to meet the standards that we say they meet. We want to make sure that nothing in our product is, has any ties to, any kind of, slave labor or child trafficking or, anything that's like helping to promote the arms trade that would be, supporting, wars or things like that. So there's a number of things that are pretty standard for a code of conduct. And then ours really takes the animal welfare part to the next level. And, that includes a lot of what I already talked about with the chicken welfare, and the same with any beef, pork, venison, and salmon that we also use in our foods. And so that's a really exciting thing. And again, it's a commitment that we're making to our suppliers that these are our values and we want you to help us uphold those values. And we know it's going to take work. And that's where a role like mine will be able to work with our suppliers to help them get these things in place and set a timeline that makes sense for them. So we're asking them to make the commitment, but we're giving them realistic timelines to reach some of these milestones so that we don't want to put them out of business by making them do these lofty goals that we have, but we know that there is a path that's going to allow these businesses to do that with us. And some of that includes environmental, making sure that they're, preserving efficiencies in their facilities and things like that. So that's another big initiative that we've been working on. We have applied for our B Corp certification, and we're just waiting to find out if we made it or not. So hopefully the next time I get a chance to talk to you, I will be able to say that we have achieved B Corp certification. So that's exciting too.
That's very exciting. Love that you're sharing the information. You talk about partnering with these other vendors and whatnot and wanting to help them get on board with all of this. And that goes back to the sharing of information that you talked about early on. Basically, if we can work together to improve, that gets us so much farther than if we're doing it solo. So that's fantastic.
I mean, so what I was mentioning earlier, it's like if we wanted to move to, the better chicken, like chicken raised to those standards, or say beef raised in a regenerative agriculture setting that isn't as polluting as factory farming, it's expensive, right? It's always expensive, and it's really expensive for a small brand like ours. But if we can work together as a community and start purchasing regeneratively raised beef at scale, then it suddenly becomes more affordable for everybody. And that's the kind of ways where we're looking for the value proposition in these sustainability measures. And that collaboration is really going to help all of us do business and do good at the same time and stay profitable. Of course, that's what businesses want. They don't want to increase their costs and, not break even, obviously. So we have to be very creative and work together to find solutions that make it economically feasible.
The partnerships make that happen. Very good.
Absolutely.
What can pet parents do to choose more sustainable pet products for their companion animals? I'm especially interested in this. I tell you, years ago, there weren't really these options, right? I talked about looking at it on packages of food for myself, my family, but as we've seen now, it's now becoming a little bit more prevalent in the industry, which to me is fantastic. So tell us, what do you think us pet parents can do?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot, actually. The first thing is, I think any reputable company is going to be very transparent about their ingredients, what's in their products, and where it comes from. And that's, that transparency is really important to know that what they might say publicly is true. And you can usually go to a brand's website and you should be able to find an ingredient map that might say this is sourced in Turkey and this comes from Ecuador and this comes from China or wherever those ingredients come from, so that you know exactly what's in the product. And then read the label in terms of making sure that the food is the quality that you need. There's a lot that consumers can learn about how to read an ingredient panel and what the most important ingredients are, those first ones, and making sure that there's real animal protein right at the top and not all the meals and fillers. because the more meals and fillers that are used, that's more corn and soy, which has also got some environmental impacts that are associated with that. So if you're buying a really high quality food, that's sustainable in and of itself, because you don't have to feed them as much food. They don't poop as much, so you're not using as many poop bags, and you're not putting as much poop out into the world when the food is really high quality. And of course, it keeps your dog a lot healthier and happier, and less visits to the vet. That's sustainable, because you don't have to drive to the vet all the time, so just choosing really healthy products for your pet is sustainable in and of itself. And then some of those certifications that I mentioned, in particular, I think for food, it is those, certified humane or GAP certified. That just, again, that guarantees you can't have that certification and put it on your packaging unless you've met these global standards that you have to go every year and get recertified. So it's, those logos, icons really mean something, and it means that there is a governing body that backs up the claims that the company might be making. You'll also see that with the sustainable packaging or plastic neutral, you might see. So those little icons do mean something, and it's hard to get it all, right? So pet parents or anybody, we all have to do this and decide what's the most important things for me, and weigh, is it the humane treatment of animals is the most important thing? Then those are the icons I'm going to look for first. Is it more sustainable packaging? Then I can go there. And again, there's really a lot of research you can do on a company's site, or there are a number of, Shop with Your Heart is one website that will talk a lot about how animals are treated. It's a project of the ASPCA, but they tell you which brands and which products of which brands have proteins that have been sustainably raised. Carbon neutral, you'll start to see on some of these things. So again, there's information on the bag, and sometimes these bags are really dense, and you have to kind of really read carefully to see what's in there. And then, I think it's really important for all of us as consumers to vote with our wallets when we buy from brands that are really working hard to change and to help foster sustainability in the community. The more they sell, the more they can do. And the more successful they are, the more they can really lead the industry and demonstrate that this work matters. It matters to consumers. And that, again, there's a business case for why businesses should do it. It's not a losing battle. And it's not just because you want to do well or do good, but because it works. And then lastly, I just always want to encourage people to shop locally and, support your local pet stores, shop your Pet Food Express, because that's where you're going to learn the most. The people who work at your local stores know what they're talking about. They know about the foods, they know about the products, they know about the companies behind them. What a gift to be able to walk into a store with your dog, and the people know the dog and give them a little treat, and, that sense of community and camaraderie, and again, resources for helping pet parents be the best parents that they can be is something you really only can get at the local level. So we love our independent retailers. We love our relationship with you. We're so grateful to be one of the brands you carry, because I know you care so deeply about what you're putting out for your pet parents. And those are some of the ways that we can all. It's a lot about just educating ourselves and just being conscientious when we're making our choices.
I really appreciate that. We say that if we wouldn't feed it to our pets, we won't sell it for yours. So I think that's really important.
Yeah.
And to your point about reading the bag, there is a lot of information on there, but it's good information. Yeah. And having been with Pet Food Express for over 14 years now, I've read many a bag. And I think that's one of the critical roles our teams play. They're just incredibly knowledgeable people in the stores that can help customers decipher what's on that bag. And so I appreciate you mentioning that too. It's been so wonderful to talk to you. I've got so many questions actually from some folks that are online. If you're ready to take some.
Oh, absolutely. I'll do my best.
All right, let's see. How has the company maintained its standards during sourcing and other shortages caused by the pandemic?
Well, that's a great question. We've had to change some of our more some of our smaller ingredients, some of the vitamins and minerals and trace minerals that we get. We've had to, certainly there's been shortages all over that we get from further away. That has been an issue, but fortunately for us, because we source our animal proteins are all sourced really close to home. We haven't had as much of a problem getting the ingredients. It's been that the costs have been so much higher for us. We've just seen, as everybody has, a really big increase in the price of our ingredients. But for the most part, we have been, again, very fortunate. For our poultry, we work with a poultry collective or cooperative, that actually thrived during the pandemic because they were one of the only one of the only resources in their area that was consistent and working well, because it was more of a small scale operation. And some of the bigger scale operations that rely on a lot more stuff coming in and out, they were hampered more than some of our smaller suppliers. So we were very fortunate in that regard, and knock on wood, we will continue to be.
I'll knock on wood with you.
Thank you.
All right. What are some extremes in pet food standards that people might not know about, especially that Earth Animal has, maybe that you haven't specifically addressed?
Some extremes. I'm not sure sort of what direction that might be going. I mean, the thing with pet food is that there isn't really a very strong governing body around what it can be. There's a governing body that says you can't make claims that you can't back up. So you really can't say the highest nutritional value on the market or things like that. You have to be conscientious about the claims that you make. But there just isn't a lot of oversight that isn't self-selected by companies. So that's when you get those certifications in place, and those are sort of the way that you ensure that you're keeping up with these standards. And so there's, like if you look at rawhides, for example, rawhides are made out of really, really horrible parts of, it's the last thing. It's after jerky, and it's after, it's after what everything else has been taken out from that animal. And then they just kind of collect the rest. They bleach it, they put formaldehyde in it. And there's nothing that says they can't sell that. There's nothing that says they can't say it's really a great, healthy treat for your dog. And it's not, it's actually very, very toxic, and, causes a lot of issues for a lot of dogs. So it's, again, that's more where the consumer has to look carefully at the sources. And in terms of the high end, the sky's the limit. I mean, any pet food company can set the highest standards that they want to set. So they can say only regeneratively raised bison, or, there's all sorts of new proteins coming into the market. So in terms of that extremes, we can go as far as we want. We can, because all of those are just set independently. We set it. Nobody tells us what we have to do in terms of like a regulatory body.
And I'm sure as we continue that research and move towards, what the next high standard is, then that standard bumps.
Right.
What's the next extreme? What else can we do?
Yeah. I mean, another example of that would be flea and tick. Some people might have seen, there's been a lot of stories about one particular flea collar that has caused, a number of deaths and an even larger number of adverse reactions in animals and in people. And yet there's nothing out there that says that there has to be a recall. They just recently had some hearings in Congress to try to put some kind of a mechanism in place to be able to find, when something like that is happening, and when you see a product that is clearly have been recalled years ago, if it was in the human space, trying to push the needle there a little bit to get a little bit more regulation on some of the things that are out in the pet space.
All right. Let's see. I've got a couple more for you before we wrap up. Let's see. Aside from the environmental benefit, does Earth Animal have any information that has determined any health benefit to pets using the sustainable proteins?
That's a great question. If you were to ask our founders, they would say that an animal that lives a good life and is not slaughtered when it's petrified is going to be a healthier animal to consume. There is data that says that if an animal is in a terrified state, that there are all these hormones that are released into the animal's muscle meat that will follow it through the manufacturing process and can have an adverse reaction on the dog. I can't give you studies that prove it, but so that's sort of the animal welfare passionate people that our founders are say. But also, like with any protein, if there's pesticides in what they're eating, if they're being given too many hormones, too many antibiotics, if they're eating GMO foods, things like that, that is going to impact the quality of the meat that is being consumed. So the healthier the animal before it goes, the healthier your animal is going to be when it eats that food.
Excellent. All right. Let's see. No, I think we're good. Actually, that kind of did it. Is there anything else you want to share before we part?
I just want to say that, I to anyone who's watching, I love that you're paying attention to this. Everything in this pet fair is so important, and it's such a nice resource to have available to you. And there's so much great stuff to learn here this weekend. And I hope that if anyone has any questions directly about the pet industry as a whole or about Earth Animal, you can always reach out on our website, which is earthanimal.com, and there's a way there to get in touch with our customer service team, and happy to share as much information with anybody that might want to know more about the best way to make sure their animals are happy and healthy through their life with you.
Excellent. And if we haven't gotten to questions, feel free to also use that chat feature, and we take down emails, so we can absolutely respond to folks that way as well. Kristen, it was a pleasure speaking with you. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge. I certainly learned something. I learned a lot, actually, and I think that you all are doing some great things. Proud to be partners with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great.
All right. Happy Pet Fair, everybody.